shy waitress greeted Vampire King's deaf mom. Her greetings made every guest frozen and shocked. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get started. It was a night like any other at the exclusive Crimson Court, a private club that catered to the city's elite, a place where money flowed like wine and the air always seemed to shimmer with power. Elena had been working there as a waitress for several months now. She wasn't from the glamorous world of the rich and famous. She was just a shy girl trying to make ends meet, hoping that one day things would get better. Her shift was long, the guests demanding, and the atmosphere tense. But that night, something extraordinary was about to unfold. Elena was preparing to serve at one of the most prestigious tables, Table 7, where a group of highly influential people sat. As she approached, she noticed something that made her stop in her tracks. At the head of the table sat a woman, older and elegant, yet alone in her isolation. Elena's eyes caught the woman's, sharp, intelligent, but distant. The woman was trying to communicate with the guards, but they just stood there, confused, not understanding. Elena, having learned sign language from her grandmother, could recognize the signs immediately. This woman, the mother of the Vampire King, was attempting to communicate in the language Elena had grown up with, a language lost to most. Elena felt a strange pull in her heart. Despite her usual shyness, something about the woman's lonely gaze stirred something deep inside her. Without thinking, Elena set her tray down, walked over to the woman, and signed, "May the night bring you peace, your grace. You honor us with your presence." The moment her hands finished the gesture, the entire room seemed to freeze. The hum of conversation stopped, and every eye in the room turned toward Elena and the woman. Whispers spread like wildfire, some of them laced with awe, others with confusion. But it was the woman's reaction that shocked everyone. Her eyes widened, and tears began to fall down her cheeks. She signed back, her hands trembling, "You speak the silent tongue." Elena blinked in surprise. She had only learned a few basic signs from her grandmother's old journal, never imagining she would use them in such a setting. "I learned from my grandmother." Elena signed back, nervous but determined. The woman's expression softened, and she smiled. A small, grateful gesture that sent a ripple of astonishment through the room. The guards were stiff, unsure of what to do, but the woman raised her hand to stop them. It was then that the man at the other end of the room stood, a tall, commanding figure. His eyes locked on Elena with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. Lucian Voss, the Vampire King, was here, and he had seen everything. Elena's heart raced as he approached, his every step measured, his presence overwhelming. The room parted for him like the Red Sea, and all eyes followed his every move. As he reached Elena, he didn't speak immediately. He simply stared at her, his gaze unreadable, before finally asking, "How do you know the silent tongue?" Elena, still trembling from the attention, signed back, "I learned it from my grandmother." Lucian's eyes narrowed. His mother, the queen, had been silent for years, and here was a stranger, a mere waitress, who had spoken to her in a language long thought forgotten. What did this mean? Could it be that Elena was just an innocent girl, or was there something far more significant at play? The entire room held its breath, waiting for what would come next. Lucian's gaze never left Elena as she stood there, her heart racing in her chest. The entire room seemed to be holding its breath, the tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. She had never imagined that her simple act of kindness would have such an effect, but here she was, the center of attention of one of the most powerful beings in the world. Lucian's eyes were like burning embers, intense and probing. "Tell me, how did you learn the silent tongue?" he asked, his voice low and commanding. Elena, though nervous, stood her ground. She signed back, "I learned from my grandmother. She taught me the old ways." Lucian's eyes flickered with something that could have been surprise, but his expression remained unreadable. His mother, the queen, had not spoken to anyone in years. And yet, this girl, this simple waitress, had not only spoken to her, but had done so in a language that was thought to be lost to time. His mind raced. What did this mean? Was this a coincidence, or was there something far more significant happening? The room remained dead silent as Lucian slowly walked around Elena, sizing her up. She could feel his presence like a weight on her shoulders, a quiet power radiating from him. The guards around the room were still, their eyes darting between Lucian and Elena, unsure of what to do. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Lucian spoke again. "You've caused quite a stir, little waitress," he said, his tone still measured but laced with something Elena couldn't quite place. "Do you understand what you've just done?" Elena swallowed hard, her hands shaking as she signed back. "I didn't mean to cause any trouble. I just wanted to be kind to your mother." Lucian's eyes softened for a brief moment, and Elena caught a glimpse of something that almost resembled gratitude. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by the cold, distant mask he wore. "Kindness, Lucian repeated softly. "You are unaware of the power you've just awakened, the power that has been dormant for centuries." Elena's confusion deepened, but before she could respond, Lucian turned to his mother, who was still watching the exchange with wide, tear-filled eyes. The queen signed something to Lucian, her hands moving gracefully through the air, and for a moment, Lucian's expression faltered. Elena couldn't make out the signs, but she could sense the weight of the conversation. Finally, Lucian turned back to her. "You are no ordinary human," he said, his voice almost a whisper now, as if speaking the words out loud could change everything. "There is something about you, something that calls to us." Elena's heart raced even faster. "I don't understand," she signed, looking into his eyes. "What are you saying?" Lucian stepped closer to her, his presence so commanding it was as if he was pulling her into his orbit. "You've awakened something in my mother," he said, his voice softer but still full of authority. "She hasn't communicated in years. And you, a simple waitress, have brought her back." Elena felt a rush of confusion and disbelief. She had never imagined that her small act of kindness could have such a profound impact. The world she had known, the quiet, simple life of a waitress, suddenly seemed like a distant memory. She was now entangled in a web she could not escape, drawn into the orbit of a vampire king and his ancient family. "I didn't mean to," Elena began, but Lucian cut her off with a raised hand. "You don't need to explain yourself," he said. "The question now is what we do with you." His voice was calm, but there was an undeniable edge to it. Elena's thoughts raced. What did he mean by that? Was she in danger? Had her life just taken a turn she could never undo? Lucian's gaze softened once more, and for the first time, Elena saw a flicker of something more human in his eyes. "Come with me," he said simply, his tone no longer cold but oddly gentle. "We have much to discuss." Elena didn't know if she had a choice. She had never been a part of this world, never asked for any of it. But now, it seemed that this world had found her. She looked at the queen, who was still smiling gently at her, a kind of unspoken understanding passing between them. The queen had seen something in Elena, something that made her believe that this girl, this simple waitress, could change everything. As Lucian led Elena through the ornate halls of the Crimson Court, she couldn't help but feel a sense of dread settling in her stomach. She had no idea what awaited her in this new world, but one thing was certain. Her life would never be the same again. As Lucian led Elena through the grand corridors of the Crimson Court, the weight of the moment pressed down on her chest. Her heart pounded in her ears, each step she took seeming to echo in the vast, ornate halls. The walls were adorned with ancient tapestries, their colors faded but still striking in their beauty. The floors beneath her feet were polished marble, gleaming like the surface of a frozen lake. Every corner was filled with the echoes of history, whispers of old power, and now, Elena was part of it. She had no idea where this path would lead, but she could feel the pull of destiny tightening around her like a noose. Lucian walked ahead of her, his figure tall and commanding, his every step filled with purpose. He said nothing as they passed through room after room, the silence only adding to Elena's growing sense of unease. She couldn't help but wonder, what did he mean when he said she had awakened his mother? What was it about her that had caused such a reaction? She had only been kind, offering a simple greeting, and yet, it seemed that act had changed everything. Finally, they reached a large, closed door at the end of a long hallway. Lucian stopped and turned to her, his gaze intense, almost like he was studying her. Elena felt a shiver run down her spine as he spoke. Behind this door is a place you may never leave, Lucian said, his voice steady but heavy with meaning. Are you ready to know what lies beyond? Elena swallowed hard, her mind racing. She hadn't been ready for any of this. She was just a waitress, a simple girl with no place in a world like this. But now, she was standing at the threshold of a life she had never imagined. I don't know. She signed back, her hands trembling. I don't know if I'm ready. Lucian's expression softened, just for a moment, before he gave a slight nod. You have no choice. You are part of this world now, whether you like it or not. With that, he pushed open the door, revealing a large, circular room filled with bookshelves that reached the ceiling. The air smelled of ancient parchment and dust, the kind of scent that belonged to centuries of knowledge and power. In the center of the room was a large table, and seated at it was an elderly man, hunched over a pile of scrolls, his hands moving quickly as he read. Lucian stepped inside, and the man immediately looked up, his sharp eyes narrowing when they landed on Elena. Lucian, who is this? The man asked, his voice gruff but tinged with curiosity. She's the one, Lucian replied. The one who spoke to my mother. The old man raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. A human, he muttered under his breath, before addressing Elena directly. Do you understand what you've done? Elena could only stare back at him, confused. I don't understand, she sighed. I didn't do anything. Lucian stepped forward, his voice commanding as he spoke. You don't realize the significance of your actions. You've broken an ancient curse. My mother hasn't spoken in years. Not a word, not a sound. But you, a human, have brought her back to us. Do you know what that means? Elena's head was spinning. She had no idea what Lucian was talking about. She hadn't meant to break any curse or awaken anything. She was just trying to be kind. I didn't know. She signed back, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know. The old man stood up, walking over to Elena, his movements slow but deliberate. He studied her carefully, as if searching for something, before nodding slowly. Perhaps it is fate, he said. Lucian, you must be cautious. There are forces at play here that we don't fully understand. Lucian's eyes darkened, his expression becoming even more serious. I am aware, he said, his tone icy. But this is no accident. Elena is a part of something much bigger than she knows. Elena felt a chill run down her spine as the old man turned and began to walk toward a nearby bookshelf, pulling out an ancient, leather-bound book. This book contains the history of our family, of our bloodline, the old man explained, flipping through the pages. There are prophecies written here, prophecies about a human who would change everything. Could this be her? Elena had no idea what they were talking about. She wasn't a part of any prophecy. She was just a girl who had been trying to make a living. I don't understand. She signed, her heart heavy with uncertainty. I'm not special. Lucian turned toward her, his gaze softening for just a moment. You are special, Elena, he said, his voice quieter now. And whether you like it or not, you are part of this world now. You may not understand it yet, but you will. Elena's mind raced as she tried to process everything. She had no idea what was happening or why she was being thrust into this world of vampires, prophecies, and ancient curses. All she knew was that her life was no longer the same, and she didn't know if she could ever go back to the way things were. But one thing was certain, she was not just a waitress anymore. Lucian led Elena further into the heart of the Crimson Court, his steps deliberate and measured. Every corner of the castle seemed to whisper with the weight of history, its ancient stones holding the secrets of centuries past. As they walked, Elena could not shake the sense that she was walking deeper into a world she could never escape. She had come from nothing, just a simple waitress trying to survive. But now, she was part of something far bigger, something she couldn't fully understand. They entered a new, grand chamber that seemed to pulse with a strange energy. A large fireplace crackled at one end of the room, casting flickering shadows across the walls. The furniture was elegant but dark, with rich velvet and polished wood. Lucian motioned for Elena to sit at a long, carved table in the center of the room. As she settled into one of the chairs, she felt the weight of his gaze on her, sharp and penetrating. You must be wondering why you're here, Lucian said, his voice steady, though there was a hint of something unreadable beneath the surface. Elena sighed. I don't understand any of this. I didn't ask for any of it. I only wanted to help your mother. Lucian leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing. You don't need to understand everything right now, but what you need to understand is that you've become a key part of this world. Whether you accept it or not, the events set in motion cannot be undone. Elena's heart raced. The gravity of his words hit her like a wave, pulling her under. She had never imagined her life would take such a turn. She had only tried to show kindness, and now, here she was, caught in the web of a vampire king's ancient world. But why me? She signed, her voice trembling. What is it about me that makes this happen? Lucian's eyes softened, just a little, as he took a deep breath. It's not just about you, Elena. It's about your bloodline, your connection to the past. There's more to your family's history than you realize. Elena's mind raced, trying to process his words. Her family? What could that possibly have to do with this? She was just a poor girl, a waitress struggling to make ends meet. She had no special heritage, no royal blood running through her veins. My family, she signed again, a deep frown furrowing her brow. Lucian nodded slowly, his gaze unwavering. Your grandmother was not just any woman, Elena. She was connected to something much older, something that goes back centuries. You, too, carry that connection. Elena could barely believe what she was hearing. Her grandmother had always been kind, gentle, and full of stories, but never anything that hinted at such a mysterious past. But my grandmother never told me anything like that. Elena sighed, her voice filled with confusion and doubt. Lucian's expression hardened. She would not have. Your grandmother was a protector, a keeper of secrets. She made sure that you never knew the truth, for your own safety. But now, you've stepped into a world where that truth can no longer be hidden. Elena's pulse quickened as the weight of his words sank in. What truth? She sighed, barely able to keep her hands from shaking. Lucian stood, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the room as he paced slowly. The truth is that your bloodline is connected to the very forces that rule this world. The vampire kings, the ancient families, and the magic that binds us all. Your grandmother knew this, and she kept you away from it. But now, you've become part of it, whether you wish it or not. Elena could feel the ground shifting beneath her feet. She was no longer just a waitress, no longer just a girl trying to get by. She was part of something much bigger, something ancient and powerful, and she didn't know if she was ready for it. So what do you want from me? Elena sighed, her voice firm despite the confusion swirling in her mind. Lucian stopped pacing and turned toward her, his expression unreadable. I want you to understand that your role in all of this is far from finished. You've awakened something in my mother, but there's more to this. We need to know who you truly are and what your connection to the past really means. We need to know what powers you might have inherited. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Powers? She was just a simple girl. The idea that she could have inherited any kind of power seemed impossible. Powers? She signed again, her hands trembling. Lucian nodded once. More, his voice low but urgent. Yes, powers that have been dormant for generations. Powers that you will need to harness if you are to survive in this world. There are forces out there, forces that will try to use you, to control you. But if you can learn to control these powers, you might just be able to protect yourself and those you care about. Elena sat there, trying to wrap her mind around everything he had just said. She wasn't ready for this. She had never asked for any of this. And yet, here she was, standing on the precipice of a new life she never could have imagined. The door to her old life had been slammed shut, and she was now trapped in a world of vampires, ancient curses, and powers beyond her understanding. But one thing was clear, her life was no longer her own. And somehow, she was going to have to find a way to survive in this new world, even if it meant unlocking parts of herself she had never known existed. Elena sat there, her mind racing as Lucian's words settled over her like a heavy blanket. The room felt colder, the air thick with tension. She had always lived a simple life, one where her worries had been about surviving from day to day. But now, everything had changed. Lucian, the vampire king, had just told her that her bloodline was tied to a power that stretched back centuries, and that she might possess abilities she had never known about. The idea seemed impossible. She was just a girl, a waitress, who had no place in a world of ancient powers and dark secrets. But the look in Lucian's eyes told her that he was not exaggerating. There was something about her that had caught his attention, something that had drawn her into this world whether she was ready or not. The silence stretched on as she tried to process what he had said. She had never been one for magic, for prophecies, or for anything out of the ordinary. Yet here she was, standing at the center of a story that felt more like a nightmare than reality. Finally, Lucian broke the silence, his voice calm but firm. You will need to learn to control whatever is inside you, Elena. It won't be easy. The power you may have inherited is dangerous, and if you're not careful, it could destroy you. We cannot afford for you to be weak. Not now. Elena shuddered at his words. She had no idea how to control something she couldn't even understand. She had lived her entire life just trying to survive, and now she was being asked to wield power she never knew existed. I'm not ready for this, she signed, her voice quiet. I don't know how to control anything like this. I don't even know what it is. Lucian's gaze softened, though his expression remained serious. I understand, he said, but you don't have a choice. You are tied to this world now, Elena. You must learn quickly. The ancient forces that rule our kind are always watching, and they will take advantage of any weakness. They know what you are capable of, even if you don't. Elena felt her chest tighten. She had never felt more alone in her life. She had always thought she was just a regular person, just a girl with a simple job. Now, she was being forced into a world she didn't understand, with enemies she couldn't see, and powers she couldn't control. What do I have to do? She signed, her hands trembling. Lucian studied her for a moment before responding, his voice low and measured. You will begin your training tomorrow. I will have my trusted mentor, Oren, help you. He will teach you how to tap into your power, how to control it. But be warned, the path will not be easy. It will test you in ways you cannot imagine. Elena felt a knot form in her stomach. And if I can't do it? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucian's expression hardened, though his voice remained steady. Then you will be vulnerable. And in this world, vulnerability means death. The weight of his words hit her like a punch to the gut. She had no choice but to learn. She had no choice but to survive. But how could she survive in a world so foreign to her? I'll do whatever it takes, she signed, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her. Lucian nodded, his eyes dark with something Elena couldn't quite place. Good, he said. You'll need all the strength you can get. With that, Lucian turned and left the room, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts. The silence that followed felt suffocating. She had always thought she knew what fear was. But now, fear had taken on a whole new meaning. She wasn't just afraid for her own life. She was afraid of what she might become, of the power that was slowly waking inside her. Would she be able to control it, or would it consume her? She had no answers, no way of knowing. All she could do was wait for the next step. She had been thrown into a world she never asked for, and now she had to find a way to survive it. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that she didn't have much of a choice. This world was far from simple, and it wouldn't let her leave. As the night stretched on, Elena lay awake, her thoughts racing. Tomorrow, her training would begin, and with it, a whole new chapter of her life, one that she wasn't sure she was ready for. But there was no turning back now. She was part of this world, whether she liked it or not, and the only way out was through. The following day, Elena stood before the massive training hall, her heart pounding in her chest. The walls were lined with ancient symbols and weapons that seemed to hum with an energy she couldn't quite understand. She had spent the night barely sleeping, her mind consumed by the weight of what Lucian had told her. Her bloodline, the power she might possess, it was all too much for her to grasp. But today, she would begin her training. There was no turning back. She had been thrust into this world, and now she had to learn how to survive it. The doors to the training hall creaked open, and she stepped inside. The room was vast, far larger than anything she had ever seen. The floor was made of polished wood, and in the center stood Oren, Lucian's trusted mentor. Oren was an imposing figure, tall and broad-shouldered, his eyes sharp and calculating. He looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and judgment, as though measuring her worth before she even said a word. So, you're the one, Oren said, his voice low and gravelly. Elena nodded, signing, I don't know what's happening, but I'll do whatever it takes to learn. Oren didn't reply right away. Instead, he walked to a nearby table, picking up a long, slender staff. The first thing you need to understand is that power is not given, it is taken. The strength within you is dormant, but it can be awakened. You will have to fight for control, fight for mastery over it. If you fail, it will consume you. Do you understand? Elena nodded again, though her heart was racing. She had no idea what this training would entail, but she knew she had no choice. She had to survive. Oren gestured for her to approach. We'll begin with something simple, he said. A test of your focus. You must concentrate on this staff and try to channel your energy into it. Focus your mind, feel the power inside you, and use it. Elena hesitated, unsure of how to proceed. How was she supposed to use a power she couldn't even feel? But she had no choice. She closed her eyes and tried to focus, as Oren instructed. At first, nothing happened. She could feel the cold air against her skin, hear the faint hum of the room, but the power she was supposed to control remained elusive. Focus, Oren's voice cut through her thoughts. Feel it. It's there, waiting for you. Elena took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she reached out for the staff. She concentrated harder, trying to push aside her fear, her doubts. She felt something shift, deep inside her, like a flicker of light. It was faint, but it was there. The staff in her hand suddenly felt heavier, as though it was being pulled by some invisible force. She gasped, her grip tightening as the energy inside her surged, pushing her to her limits. For a moment, she thought she might lose control, but then, the sensation faded. The staff fell from her hands, clattering to the floor. Good, Oren said, his voice even, though his eyes were intense. You felt it, didn't you? Elena nodded, still breathless from the experience. Yes, I think I did. That was just a taste of what's to come, Oren said. But you have a long way to go before you can truly control it. Your power is raw, untamed, and dangerous. If you want to survive in this world, you must learn to control it. But know this, every time you use it, it will take something from you. It will test your very soul. Elena shuddered at his words. What had she just done? Was that really power? The thought of losing control terrified her, but the desire to protect herself, to understand this world she was now part of, pushed her forward. I'll do whatever it takes, she signed, determination settling in her chest. Oren's lips curled into a faint, approving smile. Good. You'll need that resolve. The next lesson will be much harder. But for now, let's focus on your foundation. There is no room for weakness here. Elena braced herself as Oren began explaining the next steps of her training. As much as she wanted to run, to forget everything and return to her old life, she knew she couldn't. The path ahead was dangerous, and she had no choice but to walk it. She had been thrust into a world of ancient power and deadly secrets. There was no turning back now. She would either learn to control this power or be consumed by it. And if there was one thing Elena had learned in her life, it was that she was a fighter. She would survive, no matter what it took. The days that followed were filled with intense training. Elena had barely any time to herself, as Oren pushed her harder each day, trying to help her tap into the power she barely understood. She spent hours in the training hall, her body exhausted, her mind racing with questions. Every time she used her power, it felt like something inside her shifted, something dark and heavy that she couldn't control. She felt it slipping through her fingers, always just out of reach, but every time she tried to grasp it, it pulled away, as though testing her resolve. Oren had been clear. The power inside her wasn't just a gift, it was a curse. It was unpredictable, dangerous, and if she didn't learn to control it, it would destroy her. She had seen flashes of it, brief moments when the energy surged through her body, making her feel alive and powerful, but those moments never lasted. And now, after a week of relentless training, she found herself standing before Lucian once again, her body aching and her spirit on edge. You've come a long way, Lucian said, his voice quiet but strong. But this is just the beginning. Elena signed. I feel like I'm failing. Lucian's eyes softened, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of understanding in his gaze. You're not failing, Elena. You're learning. But the road ahead won't be easy. This power, it's a part of you now. You can't ignore it. You can't fight it. You have to embrace it. How? She signed, her fingers trembling. How do I embrace something that scares me? Lucian stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. You embrace it by accepting who you are, by facing the darkness within you and learning to control it. You are not just a girl anymore, Elena. You are a part of this world. You always have been, even if you didn't know it. His words lingered in the air, heavy and filled with truth. Elena felt her chest tighten. She wasn't sure if she could do what he asked. She wasn't sure she could face the power inside her. But she knew she had no choice. She had to learn, or she would lose everything. You're ready for the next step, Lucian continued. Tomorrow, we begin your final test. You'll face your power, and you will see what you're truly capable of. Elena's heart skipped a beat. She had no idea what Lucian meant by final test, but the tone in his voice told her it wasn't going to be easy. What do I need to do? She sighed, her voice steady despite the fear creeping into her chest. Lucian's lips curled into a faint smile, though there was no warmth in it. You'll see soon enough, he said. But remember, Elena, this is not just about learning to control your power. It's about understanding who you are. Once you know that, you will know how to use it. With that, Lucian turned and walked away, leaving Elena standing in the center of the room, her thoughts swirling. She didn't know what lay ahead, but one thing was clear. This test would determine her future. As the days passed, Elena felt her anxiety grow. She tried to prepare herself, tried to focus on her training, but each time she closed her eyes, she saw flashes of her power, the raw energy surging through her, uncontrollable. The idea of facing it in front of Lucian and Oren filled her with dread. What if she failed? What if she couldn't control it? What if it consumed her like it had consumed others before her? The night before the test, Elena couldn't sleep. She lay in the small room they had given her, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. The weight of what was to come pressed down on her like a 1,000-pound stone. She didn't know how much longer she could keep pretending that everything was fine, that she had any idea of what she was doing. But there was no turning back now. She had to face this. She had to survive. The next morning, Lucian led her to a large, open space outside the castle, a secluded courtyard surrounded by high stone walls. The air was thick with tension, the sky overcast, as if the very world knew something important was about to happen. Oren stood at the far end of the courtyard, his eyes sharp and focused. This is it, Lucian said, his voice low. You're going to face your power, Elena. You're going to prove that you can control it, or you'll face the consequences. Elena's heart pounded in her chest as she stood in the center of the courtyard, facing the unknown. She closed her eyes, trying to center herself, trying to focus on the energy inside her, but it was a struggle. She could feel it, deep inside her, swirling and restless, but it was still just out of reach. Concentrate, Lucian's voice cut through the silence. Focus. Elena took a deep breath, reaching for the power inside her. This time, she wasn't going to try to control it. She wasn't going to fight it. She was going to let it in, let it fill her. And as she did, something inside her snapped. The energy surged through her, filling every fiber of her being, and for the first time, it didn't feel like a curse. It felt like a part of her, something that belonged there. She opened her eyes, and for the first time, she saw the power that had been within her all along. The courtyard around her seemed to shimmer, the air thick with energy. She could feel it, the power flowing through her, but this time, she could control it. She could feel it shaping itself, moving according to her will. She raised her hand, and the ground beneath her feet cracked, a wave of energy rippling through the courtyard. Lucian and Oren stood in silence, watching her with narrowed eyes. Elena's heart raced, but she didn't stop. She could feel it now. The power was hers to command. She had faced it, and for the first time, she had won. The moment the surge of power subsided, Elena stood frozen in the center of the courtyard, her chest heaving with breath, her heart pounding louder than ever before. She could still feel the lingering hum of the energy that had flowed through her, and for the first time, it didn't feel like something alien. It felt like part of her, like something that belonged there. Her hands trembled, but there was no fear now. There was only a strange sense of triumph. She had done it. She had controlled it. Lucian stepped forward, his gaze intense, studying her with those piercing eyes of his. For a long moment, the courtyard remained still, the air thick with unspoken words. Finally, Lucian spoke, his voice low but filled with approval. You did well. Elena's pulse quickened at his words, and she sighed. I did it. I actually did it. Lucian nodded, though his face remained calm, his expression unreadable. You've only just begun to scratch the surface. But this is a start, and it's a good one. Oren, standing nearby, finally spoke up, his deep voice filled with something akin to respect. Not many can control their power so quickly. It took others years to reach this point. But you, Elena, you're different. Elena felt a small, satisfied smile tug at the corner of her lips, but the weight of Oren's words settled into her mind. Different, was that a good thing? Was it a curse? Or was it the key to her survival? Lucian didn't give her time to ponder the question, his voice cutting through the air again. There's more you need to learn. This power, it's only one piece of a much larger puzzle. Now that you've begun to understand how to control it, we'll teach you to harness it. To make it a weapon. Elena swallowed. A weapon. Her hands tightened into fists, and the thought of using her power for harm unsettled her. She had always tried to help others, not hurt them. You're not just here to learn to protect yourself, Elena, Lucian said, his gaze hardening. The world you're in now, this world of vampires, of ancient families, of blood and power, it's not kind. It's a world where strength is the only thing that matters. And those who don't have it, well, they don't survive. Do you understand? Elena nodded, though she wasn't sure if she fully did. She was still trying to process everything that had happened in the last few days. She was no longer just a waitress. She was a part of a world she had never known, a world full of dark powers and ancient beings. The next step, Lucian continued, is learning how to control your power in combat. We're going to test you. We need to know if you're truly ready to face the challenges ahead. Elena felt a chill run down her spine at the word combat. Her heart raced. She hadn't expected this. She didn't want to hurt anyone. But in the world she was now part of, maybe there was no other choice. Lucian seemed to sense her unease. This isn't about fighting for the sake of fighting, he said, his tone softening just slightly. This is about survival. You need to know how to protect yourself. You need to be able to defend yourself when the time comes. Elena took a deep breath and sighed. I will learn. I will do whatever it takes. Oren stepped forward, his expression serious but approving. Good. The first lesson will take place tomorrow. You'll be facing one of our best warriors. He'll push you to your limits. Don't hold back. Elena felt a lump form in her throat. A warrior? She wasn't sure if she was ready for this. She wasn't a fighter. But something inside her, something fierce, urged her to push forward. She had no other choice. If she wanted to survive, she had to learn. I won't hold back, she signed, though her hands still trembled. The next day, Elena stood in the same courtyard, facing her opponent. The warrior was tall, with muscles that rippled beneath his dark tunic. His eyes were cold, assessing her like a predator sizing up its prey. You've come a long way, he said, his voice rough, almost mocking. Let's see if you can put that power of yours to use. Elena's heart raced as she faced him, the weight of the challenge sinking in. She had no experience with combat, but she could feel the power inside her, the energy that she had learned to control. It was restless, eager to be used, to be unleashed. Lucian stood at the edge of the courtyard, watching silently, his gaze never leaving her. Oren was nearby, observing the fight with a keen eye. Ready? The warrior asked. Elena nodded, though her stomach twisted with nerves. She didn't want to fight. She didn't want to hurt anyone. But this was the world she was now part of. There was no escape. She had to fight. The warrior lunged at her, fast and precise. Elena barely had time to react. She raised her hand instinctively, and the air around her seemed to crackle. A burst of energy shot out from her palm, knocking the warrior back. He staggered but quickly regained his footing, eyes narrowing with a mix of surprise and challenge. Not bad, he said, a smirk forming on his lips. But you'll need more than that to win. Elena's heart pounded in her chest. She had done it again. She had used her power, but she couldn't stop now. The warrior attacked again, this time with more force. Elena focused, the power inside her surging once more, guiding her movements. She dodged his strikes, her body moving faster than she thought possible. For the first time, she felt the energy inside her as an extension of herself, as a part of her that she could control. She was no longer afraid. She was ready. The fight continued, her movements becoming more fluid, more confident. She could feel the energy flowing through her, guiding her, empowering her. When she finally landed a strike, the warrior stumbled back, clearly surprised by the force behind it. He nodded, an approving glint in his eyes. You're ready, he said. Elena stood there, panting, her body sore but triumphant. She had done it. She had fought, and she had won. And for the first time since she had entered this world, Elena felt like she truly belonged. Elena stood in the center of the courtyard, breathing heavily, her body sore from the battle. The warrior who had challenged her had finally stepped back, acknowledging her strength with a nod. She had done it. She had fought with the power she had been learning to control. But as she looked around at the faces of those who had watched her fight, the small thrill of victory quickly faded. Lucian's gaze, sharp and calculating, never wavered as he watched her closely. Oren, who had been silently observing the fight, was now walking toward her, his face unreadable. Elena's heart was still racing, and she felt a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. She had never imagined herself in a fight like that, let alone standing victorious. But in this world, that didn't seem to matter. What mattered was whether she could continue to grow, continue to control the power that pulsed within her. Lucian finally spoke, his voice low and commanding. You did well, Elena. But this is only the beginning. You've proven you have the strength to survive in this world. But now, we need to see if you have the mind to match it. Elena sighed, her hands still trembling from the fight. What do you mean? Lucian's eyes softened for a brief moment, but his voice remained firm. In the world you're now part of, power isn't enough. You must also learn to navigate the politics, the alliances, and the betrayals that will come your way. You must be able to outthink your enemies, not just outfight them. Elena's heart sank. She had always been good at surviving by doing what she knew best, working hard, keeping her head down, and staying out of trouble. But in this new world, she was no longer a simple waitress. She was a pawn in a game she didn't fully understand. How do I do that? She sighed, her fingers trembling. Lucian's expression grew serious. You'll learn. But first, we need to test your ability to think under pressure. We'll put you in a situation where you'll have to make a choice. A choice that could change everything for you. Oren stepped forward, his deep voice steady. You're not ready for the political world yet, but you need to start learning. We'll start with something simple, a trial of trust. We'll see who you choose to trust in a situation where betrayal is inevitable. Elena's stomach twisted at the thought. Trust? She didn't know who she could trust anymore. She had already seen the dark side of this world, how power was used to control, to manipulate. Lucian's gaze never left her as he continued. Tomorrow, we'll present you with a challenge. You'll be given two choices, one that could give you an advantage and another that could help you build an ally. But one of those choices will lead to betrayal. You'll have to decide who to trust, and you'll have to live with the consequences of your decision. Elena's chest tightened as she thought about the weight of such a choice. Could she really trust anyone in this world? Would she be able to tell who was truly on her side? The warrior who had trained her had shown no signs of loyalty, and Lucian himself seemed more focused on power than anything else. Oren's voice broke through her thoughts. You're not alone in this, Elena. But you must learn to make the hard decisions. Because in this world, no one will hesitate to turn their back on you if it benefits them. You have to decide who you are and who you want to be. Whether you like it or not, you're part of this game now. Elena felt a cold shiver run down her spine. The idea of playing this game, of choosing who to trust, of navigating the lies and deceit that ran through this world, was terrifying. But the thought of losing everything, of becoming a pawn to be used and discarded, was even worse. I'll learn, she signed, her voice quiet but determined. I'll do whatever it takes to survive. Lucian nodded approvingly, though his eyes remained distant. Good. You're learning. As the day drew to a close, Elena found herself alone in the room they had given her, her mind swirling with uncertainty. The power inside her had been awakened, and she was starting to control it. But now she faced a new challenge, the world of politics, of trust and betrayal, of choices that would shape her future. Could she survive in this world, or would it consume her? She wasn't sure, but one thing was certain, she had no choice but to try. The next day, when the challenge was presented to her, Elena stood at a crossroads. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing on her. What would she choose? Who could she trust? As the pieces of the game began to fall into place, Elena realized that her survival didn't just depend on her power. It depended on her ability to navigate the treacherous waters of a world that had no place for weakness. And the only way to survive in this world was to keep her enemies close, her allies closer, and her instincts sharper than ever before. The next morning, Elena stood in the courtyard, the cool air pressing against her skin as she waited for the challenge to begin. Lucian, Oren, and several others were present, watching from the sidelines. She could feel their eyes on her, their expectations weighing heavily on her shoulders. Today would determine her place in this dangerous world. The task was simple in theory but treacherous in practice. She would be given two choices, each with its own consequences. One would offer her a powerful ally, and the other would give her an advantage in power, but the price would be betrayal. Elena could already feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She was no longer just a girl trying to survive. She was a part of a game that had no rules, a game where trust was as dangerous as deceit. Lucian's voice broke the silence. Today, you'll face a choice. You'll need to decide who you trust and what you're willing to sacrifice to win. Make the wrong choice, and you'll regret it. Make the right choice, and you may just find yourself in control of your future. Elena sighed. How do I know who to trust? Lucian's gaze softened, though his voice remained stern. You don't. That's the point. You will have to use your instincts, your judgment. In this world, trust is a rare commodity, and betrayal is an everyday occurrence. The words felt like a weight in her chest. Could she really trust her instincts? Could she make the right choice? Or would she end up falling into a trap? Oren stepped forward, his gaze intense. The challenge will begin now. You'll have to choose who you approach first. One of them will offer you the power you seek. The other will offer you loyalty, but at a cost. Choose wisely. Elena felt her stomach twist. She had been in situations before where she had to make difficult decisions, but nothing like this. The stakes were higher than ever. She turned toward the two figures standing a few paces away. One was tall, with dark eyes that seemed to see right through her. He had an air of quiet confidence about him, and Elena could tell that he was a player in this world. The other stood just slightly apart, a woman with a guarded expression and a sense of mystery about her. Her eyes held something deeper, something Elena couldn't quite place. Both had the potential to help her, to guide her, but both also held secrets she might never understand. She had to choose. She glanced back at Lucian, who was watching her closely, and then at Oren, whose face was unreadable. They were waiting for her decision. Elena took a deep breath, steadying her nerves. There was no turning back now. She had to decide who would be her ally, and who might be setting a trap. She walked toward the woman first. The woman looked at her with those piercing eyes, her expression not quite welcoming, but not unfriendly either. Elena could feel the tension in the air between them. The woman spoke first, her voice low and measured. You've come for something, she said. I know why you're here, and I can help you. Elena sighed. How? The woman's lips curled into a faint smile. I can give you the power you need. I can help you control the energy inside you, but it won't come without a cost. Trust is a dangerous thing, Elena. It's fragile, and once broken, it's hard to repair. But if you trust me, I'll help you unlock your potential. Elena hesitated. The woman's words sounded convincing, but something about her didn't sit right. The air around her seemed to crackle with something more, something Elena couldn't quite place. What do you want in return? Elena sighed. The woman's smile faded slightly. Loyalty. Protection. You'll owe me, just as you'll owe anyone who helps you in this world. You won't survive without it. Elena felt a knot form in her stomach. This didn't feel like the right choice. She wasn't sure why, but something in her instincts screamed that this woman wasn't the ally she appeared to be. She turned toward the man. He studied her carefully, his expression unreadable. His dark eyes held no warmth, but they also didn't carry the same heavy burden of secrets that the woman's did. He gave a small nod as she approached, his voice cold but firm. You've made your choice, he said. I'm not here to deceive you. I'm here to offer you what you truly need. Power. No games. No tricks. I will help you harness your abilities, and I will do it without asking for anything in return. But there is one condition. Elena sighed. What is it? The man's gaze hardened. You must be willing to walk the path of strength. You'll face challenges, and you'll need to be ready to sacrifice everything to get what you want. If you're not ready for that, don't waste my time. Elena's pulse quickened. The choice was clear. The woman's offer was tempting, but it came with strings attached. The man's offer was straightforward, but it required something more from her, a willingness to sacrifice, to become someone she wasn't sure she wanted to be. She signed, I choose you. The man nodded once, his lips curling into a faint, approving smile. Good. You've made the right choice. Elena felt the weight of her decision settling in her chest. She had chosen the path that would lead her to power, but it was also the path that would change her. There was no going back now. The game had only just begun, and she had to be ready to face whatever came next. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she was certain of one thing. In this world, there was only one rule. Survive. Elena stood in the grand hall, the weight of her decision settling over her like a heavy cloak. She had chosen her path, the one that led to power and control. The man, who had offered her this straight path, now stood beside her, silent as ever, his presence like a shadow she couldn't shake. Lucian had watched the exchange with a look of approval, his piercing eyes never leaving her, as if silently assessing her every move. Oren had said nothing but gave a slight nod of approval, his eyes filled with the same unreadable intensity. Elena could feel the world shifting around her, as though the very air had thickened with anticipation. She had made her choice, but she could already sense the danger that came with it. The man beside her had made it clear. Power came at a cost, and that cost would be her willingness to sacrifice anything and everything for survival. She had known this world was cruel, but now, it felt more real than ever. She had chosen to walk the path of strength, and there would be no turning back. As the days passed, Elena's training intensified. The man who had offered her his guidance, who had promised to help her, control the power inside her, pushed her harder than she ever thought possible. She was no longer just learning the basics. Now she was learning how to wield her power in ways that were both physical and mental, how to manipulate it to her will, to bend it like a weapon. It wasn't just about force anymore. She had to learn to think ahead, to anticipate her enemy's moves. Every day, the stakes got higher, and the pressure mounted. The energy inside her had become both a gift and a curse. She had learned to harness it, but it still had the ability to overwhelm her, to take over when she least expected it. But with each passing day, Elena grew stronger. She could feel the power swirling inside her, responding to her commands, moving with a purpose. But even as she mastered it, there were moments when the darkness within her seemed to whisper, urging her to give in, to let go of her restraint. These were the moments that scared her the most. She had seen others fall victim to their own powers, losing themselves to the raw, unrelenting force that surged through them. She was determined not to make the same mistake. One evening, after a particularly grueling training session, Elena found herself standing on a balcony overlooking the vast expanse of the Crimson Court. The castle stretched before her, its dark towers reaching up into the night sky. The stars above were barely visible, the sky thick with clouds. The air felt heavy, and the silence around her was suffocating. She stood there, lost in thought, when Lucian appeared beside her. His presence was as imposing as ever, but there was a slight softness in his gaze that she hadn't seen before. "You've come far," Lucian said, his voice low and steady. Elena turned to face him, her heart racing. "I'm trying," she signed, her hands trembling slightly. "But I don't know if I can keep this up. I'm afraid of losing myself." Lucian regarded her silently for a moment before speaking again. "That fear will always be with you, Elena. The power you've chosen to wield is not one that can be controlled without cost. But the question you must ask yourself is this: what are you willing to sacrifice to keep it under control?" Elena swallowed hard. She had asked herself that question many times since she had made her choice, but hearing it out loud from Lucian made it feel more real, more immediate. What was she willing to sacrifice? Her humanity? Her soul? She wasn't sure anymore. "I don't want to lose myself," she signed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want to become like them." Lucian's gaze softened slightly, though his expression remained serious. "You're already different, Elena. You have made a choice that has set you on a path no one can walk for you. The only thing that will keep you from losing yourself is the strength to decide who you want to be. But that strength won't come from others. It has to come from you." Elena stood there, processing his words, feeling the weight of them pressing on her chest. The darkness inside her, the power, it had become part of her, and there was no way to rid herself of it. She could only choose to control it, to let it shape her into something stronger. But that power came with its own dangers. She had seen it in the way others used their strength for manipulation, for control. She didn't want to become like that. She didn't want to lose herself in the process. But Lucian was right. There was no going back now. She had made her choice, and now she had to live with it. She had to survive. I'll learn, Elena sighed, her voice firm, though there was still uncertainty in her heart. I'll learn to control it. Lucian gave a small nod, his eyes never leaving her. Good. But remember, Elena, control is not enough. You must also learn to trust your instincts. In this world, instincts can be as powerful as any weapon. Elena looked out over the vast expanse of the Crimson Court, the weight of the decision ahead of her settling in her chest. She had chosen this world, and now she had to live in it. She had to learn to navigate its dangers, to trust herself and the power inside her. But as the clouds parted slightly, revealing a sliver of the night sky, Elena realized one thing. There was no turning back now. She was part of this world, and the only way forward was to embrace the power she had chosen to wield. Whether she was ready or not, she would face whatever came next. The next few days passed in a blur of intense training and relentless pressure. Elena had immersed herself fully in the lessons, learning how to harness her power, sharpen her instincts, and navigate the complex web of alliances and betrayals that Lucian had warned her about. But the weight of the decision she had made, the price of the power she had chosen, was beginning to settle deep within her. The challenges were growing more difficult, the stakes higher. Every decision now seemed to carry the potential for disaster, and every mistake could lead to irreversible consequences. It had been a week since the training session with the warrior, and Elena was standing once again in the courtyard, waiting for Lucian. The morning fog clung to the ground, swirling around her ankles as she stood in the center of the courtyard. She had learned a lot since her first fight, but every lesson seemed to leave her with more questions than answers. The power inside her had become more refined, more controllable, but it was still unpredictable. She knew it could slip from her grasp at any moment, and that terrified her. You've come far. Lucian's voice broke through her thoughts as he appeared beside her, his presence commanding. But it's time for the next lesson. Elena turned to face him, her heart racing. What now? She sighed, her voice steady but filled with curiosity and apprehension. Lucian's expression was unreadable. Now, you'll face a new kind of challenge. One that requires not just strength, but the ability to see through deception, to read people's intentions, and to make choices quickly. He paused for a moment, as if weighing his words carefully. In this world, Elena, things are not always what they seem. You will be tested not only in combat, but in trust. You must learn how to navigate the shadows, where your allies might become your enemies, and your enemies might offer you what you need. Elena nodded, but the uncertainty lingered. She had already seen how dangerous this world could be. The lines between friend and foe were constantly blurred, and every new alliance seemed to come with a hidden cost. What kind of test is this? She sighed, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucian's eyes gleamed, a flicker of something dangerous in them. You'll see soon enough. Follow me. Lucian led her into the depths of the Crimson Court, down long, winding corridors that Elena had never seen before. The walls grew darker, the air colder as they descended into the lower levels of the castle. The further they went, the more the weight of the place seemed to press down on her. The halls were dimly lit, the faint sound of their footsteps echoing off the stone walls. Finally, they reached a large chamber, its entrance guarded by two silent sentries. The room inside was vast, filled with high stone columns and the eerie glow of candlelight. At the center of the room stood a table, and around it sat several figures, their faces hidden in the shadows. Lucian turned to Elena, his expression hard. This is where the true test begins. You'll be given a choice. One of these figures will offer you something you want: power, protection, knowledge. The other will deceive you, trying to lure you into their trap. But there's a catch. You must make your choice without knowing their true intentions. You will have to decide who to trust, and in this world, that's not a simple task. Elena's heart skipped a beat as she looked around the room. The figures at the table remained still, their identities concealed. She could feel the tension in the air, the heavy presence of those who watched her. How do I know who is trustworthy? She sighed, her voice filled with doubt. Lucian's gaze softened, but only for a moment. You don't. That's the point. You will have to rely on your instincts, your judgment. The world you've entered is full of lies and manipulation. Your challenge is to see through it all, to make the right choice. If you fail, the consequences could be disastrous. Elena took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She had been prepared for challenges, but this was different. She had to trust herself, even when every part of her screamed for caution. Lucian nodded, his gaze piercing. "You're ready. Go ahead." Elena hesitated for only a moment before stepping forward. The figures at the table remained silent, their faces obscured. She could feel their eyes on her, watching her every move. Her instincts screamed at her to proceed with caution, but she had no choice. She had to make her move. She approached the figure on the left, a tall shadow with a commanding presence. The figure's voice was low, smooth, and confident. "I can offer you what you need," the voice said, each word carefully chosen. "Power beyond your imagination. Protection from those who would try to harm you. You will have all the resources at your disposal to survive this world." Elena could feel the weight of the promise in the figure's words. It was tempting, but something in her gut told her to be wary. She turned to the other figure, the one on her right. This one was quieter, less imposing. The voice was softer, almost comforting. "I cannot offer you power or wealth," the figure said, "but I can offer you the truth. You will know who to trust, and you will be guided through the shadows. The choice is yours, but I ask you to think carefully. Power can corrupt, but knowledge can lead you to the right path." Elena stood there, caught between the two. She had to make her choice. The first offer spoke to her desire for control, for security in this dangerous world. But the second offered something more intangible: knowledge, truth, guidance. She wasn't sure which was the right path, but something about the second offer resonated with her. Power could be dangerous, but knowledge, understanding, that could give her a chance to survive without losing herself. With a final breath, Elena signed, "I choose you." She turned to the second figure, trusting her instincts. The figure nodded, their eyes filled with something unreadable. "You've made the right choice." The room seemed to shift, the tension easing, and Elena felt a sense of calm settle over her. But as she looked at Lucian, she knew the game was far from over. She had chosen, but now she had to live with the consequences of that choice. The true test had only just begun. The days that followed Elena's decision were both intense and disorienting. She had chosen the path of knowledge, the path that would lead her to understanding the shadows of this world, and now, she found herself on the edge of something even more complicated than she could have imagined. The figure she had chosen, the one who had offered her truth and guidance, turned out to be someone far more influential than she had realized. She was taken to a hidden chamber deep within the Crimson Court, a place where secrets were kept and where the true nature of the court's politics and power lay. The figure, whose name was Aurelia, explained everything with a calm yet authoritative tone, guiding Elena through the intricate web of alliances, betrayals, and hidden truths that governed the vampire world. It wasn't just about controlling the power within her. It was about understanding the layers of deception that had shaped this world for centuries. Aurelia taught Elena how to see past the facades, to read between the lines of what people said and what they truly meant. Every lesson was more difficult than the last, but Elena felt herself growing sharper, more aware of the dynamics at play around her. She could feel herself slipping deeper into this world, a world of shifting alliances and hidden motives. It was no longer about fighting for survival. It was about playing the game with the right knowledge and the right timing. One night, after a particularly exhausting lesson, Elena found herself standing once more in the grand hall of the Crimson Court. The weight of everything she had learned so far hung heavy on her shoulders. She could sense the change in the air, the subtle shift in the atmosphere that signaled the arrival of something important. She wasn't sure what was coming, but she knew she couldn't hide from it. Lucian appeared, his imposing presence filling the room. His eyes locked onto hers, and for a brief moment, she saw something softer in them, a flicker of respect. "You've done well," he said, his voice steady but not without a trace of admiration. "You've learned to navigate the shadows. Now, it's time to put that knowledge to use." Elena's heart beat faster. She had come to understand how dangerous this world could be, but now, Lucian was asking her to step into the heart of it. She wasn't just a player anymore. She was a pawn with purpose. "What do you need me to do?" she signed, her voice filled with resolve. Lucian's gaze hardened slightly. "There's a new threat, someone who seeks to disrupt the balance of power. We've been watching, waiting for the right moment to act. That moment is now." You will be the key to resolving this. You'll need to infiltrate their inner circle and learn what they're planning. It's dangerous, but you are ready. Elena's mind raced. This was what she had been trained for, what she had been preparing for all along. But it felt different now. She was no longer the outsider, no longer just a girl who had stumbled into this world by accident. She was part of the game now. She was part of the power struggle. I understand, she signed, her voice steady. I'll do it. Lucian's lips curved into a small, approving smile. Good. You've come far, Elena. But remember, in this world, trust is earned, not given. Be careful who you trust, and trust yourself above all else. With those final words, he turned and walked away, leaving Elena standing alone in the hall, the weight of her new task settling heavily in her chest. As she walked back to her chambers, Elena couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. She had been thrust into this world, thrown into a game of power and deceit that she had never asked for. But now, she had no choice but to play it. She had learned to control the power inside her, to see through the lies and the manipulation. She had made the right choice, or at least, she hoped she had. But as she prepared for the next phase of her journey, Elena realized that the road ahead would not be easy. It would be filled with choices, with sacrifices, and with risks. The world of vampires was a dangerous one, and Elena knew that to survive, she would have to embrace the darkness within her, to use it to her advantage. But even as she accepted this, a small part of her wondered if she was losing herself in the process. Could she truly navigate this world without losing who she was? She wasn't sure. But one thing was certain, she would survive. She had come this far, and she would not let anything or anyone stand in her way. The game had just begun, and Elena was ready to play. Vampire stories often explore the dark and thrilling world of ancient power, betrayal, and survival, and this tale is no exception. As the protagonist delves deeper into a realm of vampires and ancient families, she is forced to confront not only the power within her, but also the treacherous politics that come with it. Through intense training and dangerous choices, she must navigate a world where trust is a rare commodity and betrayal lurks at every corner. The story showcases the complexities of vampire stories, where strength, cunning, and instinct are essential for survival. Elena, the main character, discovers that in vampire stories, power is both a gift and a curse, and to succeed, one must learn how to harness it without losing themselves in the process. As she faces her greatest test yet, the lines between friend and foe blur, making the stakes higher than ever. Vampire stories like this one reveal the internal and external battles characters face in a world where every decision could be their last. With alliances shifting and danger at every turn, Elena's journey through the dark world of vampires takes unexpected twists, ultimately revealing that survival is not just about strength, but also about mastering the art of deception. This is one of the most captivating vampire stories that blends magic, power, and suspense into a heart-pounding narrative.